Hey guys, welcome back to my layout and world of modeling. I'm Dan here as always, and in this video we're going to be covering all the projects I've gotten completed in the month of May, and it has been a productive month. I've been doing a lot of tank cars lately and focusing on a lot of builds, and I've also been filling quite a bit of projects that I got to edit and kind of scrape together. There's still a couple of things I got to film still with some different builds, but so far the first tank build came out really good, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback on that, so I'll keep making some videos on tank builds right now because that's primarily what I'm modeling right now anyway, is tank cars. So that's going to be a little bit of what this video has, but I have got some other different cars done, so I'm going to kind of show you guys that. But something I want to start doing that's a little bit different is I want to start filming out here on the layout. I'm kind of tired of having to be inside all the time filming stuff. I feel like a break of scenery would be nice, and I have a model railroad. I might as well use it to display stuff because that's where these cars are going to be in their natural habitat anyway, so I figured I'd use the space I have. So let's go ahead and get the camera set up, guys. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I've completed this month. So one of the first cars I want to go ahead and get out of the way now is one of these Milwaukee Road 4750s. I'm working on 3 of these cars right now, all the same number, MWCX 462043. I did a first car for myself and I wasn't quite happy with it, so I ended up selling it, but in the process of selling it, a lot of people got interested in that one car and they all wanted copies of it. So a lot of people reached out to me and asked, well, hey, could you make me another one? Would you be able to do a second one of those? So I'm not doing commissions right now, but the demand for this particular model was just so much that I decided to go ahead and make a few, because I did have a source for a couple more of these Milwaukee Road cars. So I decided to go ahead and see if I could make a few more of these, and so far I've made 6, and I have this and 2 more working, and one will be my own car, which I will show later. So if you feel like you're in deja vu seeing the same car later, it's because you're going to be seeing my version of this car later on, the one that I make for myself. Right now this version is for some other people, so this one is just about done. I've gotten all the decals on. The car features a lot of hand-painted rust, lots of rust dots. All this is oil on the sides, and then I used an airbrush to highlight certain areas, especially at the base of the car, and then I kind of streaked the paint a little bit, scrubbed some of it off with a Q-tip, sealed the rest in. It's got all the good work on the ends, like the kick-up spray and all that. Wheels and trucks still need powder work and various other effects. And then the most important thing on this car has been scratch building the hatches, because currently no one makes the fiberglass style hatch that I'm aware of. Tangent was the one that made the best piece. So I had to scratch build that and all the other hatches for the 3 other cars I'm making with styrene. So I had to scratch build those, and then I used Intermountain components to put the rest of the parts together. So it hasn't exactly been a fun process in building the hatches, particularly for these, but the weathering itself is pretty much it's fairly what I'm used to. There's still a little technique involved in it, obviously. It takes a little bit of time to build up the layers and things and not overdo the car. But so far these have been coming out really good. The difference on this side here is the graffiti, if you noticed, and then this side has a completely rusted out panel, while as on the other side that's just rust dot work. So you'll be seeing some more of these later on as I finish them. I just wanted to go ahead and show you guys this one now to kind of know what to expect in the next video, because you'll be seeing at least one more of these, and it'll most likely be my model of this Milwaukee Road prototype. Now, I told you guys I've been building some custom tank cars, and this is one of the prototypes I just finished. This is a UTLX sodium hydroxide style tank car, and these are very similar to a 16,000 gallon clay slurry tank car. The car body components and various things of that sort are similar, the tank body components in general, or the tank body dimensions and everything. How I built this car was I took an Athearn RTR clay slurry tank car, and I cut it down the middle, shortened it by honestly about the length of this pencil in comparison with the car body. So it wasn't shortened majorly, but I did have to take a little bit of a chunk out of the center section. Once I did that, I glued the 2 halves back together, body puttied everything, sanded everything smooth, and then I repaneled the car, added all the underbody brake piping and detailing, added brand new Trinity style pads, different end railings, modified the end railings, custom painted the cars with the two-tone black band typically seen on these chemical cars. That was an important feature to making these look right. All the decals are Smokebox Graphics decals, the stencils, everything like that. I installed Athearn Genesis trucks on these, so these have these spinning bearing caps, of course. All the weathering is done from prototype photos, so there's a lot of white streaking on the underside of this car. All of that is done with oils, and I think it turned out really good. All the components on the top, the hatch, the new hatch and everything like that, those are components from Walther's cars, and the railings and walkways themselves are done with photo etch, brass, and styrene. All the handrails are scratch built from styrene. All the railings are brass wire. Here is the second car. It is UTLX 160201. The one we just looked at was 160227. So similar cars, down to some very minor idiosyncrasies, and the weathering is obviously a little bit heavier on this one. There's a lot more grime and there's a lot more load streaking down the side, a lot of corrosion and things like that on the top fittings and the hatches, which I will show in a second. But again, built the exact same way. I actually built both of these at the same time. Reinstalled all the detail parts, lots of scratch build components, like I said, lots of decaling, paint work and things like that. I think this car, both of these took me about a month to build from start to finish, so that's including the build time, prep time, painting, decaling, weathering, and then finishing the tank bodies and the different components. So it was a lot of work, but I like doing these tank cars because, you know, you get to build some different prototypes that you don't see modeled a lot, and they're cars that I want for my personal collection, so they're honestly worth it in the end. And I would like to build one more of these, but I would like to do the GATX style if possible. There's a look at those hatches and those fittings just so you guys can see those a little bit better. Again, those are all scratch built from prototype photos. I added all of the weathering, all the rust to the little bolts and washers and hinges and things like that, all dusted off there, and then it's just a real mess there around that manway because there's just so much rust and load spillage. But that's a key feature of these cars. You know, these were built a couple years back now, and they're already in pretty rough shape in terms of them. Some are worse than others. Some are a little bit cleaner like the other one I showed, but this is a good example of a really heavy load spillage car. Here we go, guys. We have a little bit better of a lighting setup now. I apologize for that. Still learning kind of where the best parts of the layout are to film on. But this next car that I have here is an Atlas corn syrup tank car. This is one of the rarer ADM versions that they recently released. Well, actually, this one is an older version. The older versions did not have safety striping, so this is actually the older version. I apologize. With this car, I wanted to model a very well-worn ADM repaint. These tank cars were, I think they started getting repainted in, I believe the 2000s is when you saw the molecule logo get replaced with the leaf. So I wanted to model some of these. Now this car, the first thing I had to do was fade the entire tank body down to a gray. Then I added the safety striping. I did all of the underbody streaking. The entire car body is streaked with white streaks from the fade, and that's all done with white oils, using a fine tip brush, hand painting all those little streaks and then blending them out. Once I did that, then I masked up the ADM logo and airbrushed the entire thing to make the white fade. Once I did that, then I was able to go in and start doing the rust fade at the top of the tank body, streaking that down with oils. And as you can see, that rust is just starting to work its way over the ADM leaf though. I think that looks really good. It's covering up the entire tank body, as you can see, and like I said, then I just went back in and added a little bit of load streaking and spillage, rusted up the trucks, added KD couplers, kick up on the ends, of course, mud splatter and grime on the trucks, everything of that sort. But overall, I think this car came out really good. This is a good example of a modern corn syrup car. This next car here is a molten sulfur tank car, and you guys will remember this. This is obviously what we used for the first build video on this channel of tank cars anyways. It's one of the Railyard Models kits, and I don't need to say too much about this car, but I wanted to include it in the video since it is a car I recently finished. Lots of scratch build components for the kit, like the new railings, walkways, lots of handrails, the underbody piping, top railings and fittings, all that good stuff was mostly scratch built. And then I also used some other components from an old Walther sulfur tank car to finish the detailing, use the ladders, things like that. But everything else in terms of weathering, custom painted, custom decaled, faded of course, lots of rust and grime coming down from the top hatches as these cars are pretty old and they are getting very beat up. All the stenciling and everything like that is done with Smokebox graphics decals and microscale decals to fill in some of the spaces for the data. Overall, I really like this car and the way it came out. It was a time-consuming build, but I'm so glad I was able to film the entire process for you guys and kind of get the ball rolling on some more builds. So I think it turned out really good. I think it looks really good. I would like to maybe find one more of these kits if I can. I don't know if any of you guys know where I can find one, or if you have one, but if you have one that you would sell, send me a message. I would very much like to make another one of these. Well, since this is a bigger car, this is going to be a little bit harder to film, but this is a UTLX 23, yeah, it's a 23, I believe it's a 23,000 gallon ethanol style tank car. These cars are placarded for ethanol, I believe, but I need to change the placards on these. These are the old Athearn cars that they came out with a number of years back. I have 2 3-packs of these that I gotta finish up. This is the first one. This was all weathered with underbody streaking and grime and everything else, mostly powder work, modeled the kick up, got all the splatter and dirt, grime and everything else. Weathered up the trucks with a lot of grime, put the rust over the bearings, nice dirty couplers, a little bit of graffiti. Pretty typical look for these modern UTLX cars. Like I said, I'm going to be making 4 of these right now. This is the first one. The next are going to be a faded version with patching, and then I'm going to make another version like this where it just has a very light fade and maybe some graffiti and maybe some patchwork depending on kind of what I want to do. But I want to just have a little small fleet of these UTLX cars to throw into a manifest for different various services because these cars are used for various commodities, and I want a couple prototypes that represent really what I see here in my area and up in Fostoria, which is obviously the location I'm modeling here on my model railroad. A lot of the cars I do see are different variations that haul asphalt, and that's technically a different car. These mostly haul the ethanol and corn syrup, I believe, so you know, I'm not sure exactly what I'll use for these yet, but you know, it's just a car I can throw into a consist and have that realism. I think that'll look really nice. So okay, the second ADM tank car I have is this ADMX data only repaint. This is a bit of a hard car to find, but I was able to find this one on Facebook Marketplace for pretty cheap. So with this one, what I did was similar to the ADM car with the logo. I faded the entire thing with a gray fade. I streaked the entire body with white streaks. You can see that texture there on this one really, really well. All that is done with oil, and it's streaked all the way around on the ends as well, on the underbody mainly. I modeled the load spillage, added the safety striping, and then added all of the rust and grime to the underbody for the kick-up, lots of greasy splatter and things like that. Rusted up the placards a little bit, and then there's a ton of load spillage on the top hatch and around that manway there. If we can take a look at that, you can see the amount of greasy splatter and a little bit of rust on those fittings. Very common on these kinds of cars. But there you get a really good look at that white fade. That's really important when modeling these modern tank cars. A lot of these cars have this kind of streaky weathering fade, and there's a couple modelers that are doing this now. Mike Correa is doing a really good job modeling that, and I've done a couple cars this way so far. But it's so common that it's honestly one of those techniques I'm going to really try to do a lot more of. Matter of fact, a lot of these cars that you're going to see coming up also feature similar weathering. Next car here is another Atlas. This is a 25,000, I think it's a 25,000 gallon car. And again, this has a lot of white streaking on the sides, as you can see. That's all done with the oil technique again. Faded the car body down, and then I applied a lot of this rusty grimy, patchy paint to the top to look like primer showing through the paint. Lots of grime, lots of load spillage and splatter around that top hatch. I don't think that this car is used in corn syrup. Oh yeah, no, it's not. So this one's placarded for 1268. I'm not sure what that is. But this is a prototype car. I copied photos from the exact prototype, 30836 on Google Images. And I just weathered it according to those photos, and I think it turned out really good. It's got a little bit of patch repair, new data added, the new hazmat number there, and then again that really interesting primer bleed at the top. KD couplers, of course, heavy grime and mud splatter and everything like that on the underbody where the kick-up is. All very crucial features of a modern in-service car like this. Well, I haven't filmed too many of this style car lately, but recently Athearn has announced a couple of different 3-pack variations for modern Procor LPG tank cars, and these are cars I've been wanting for a very, very long time. And they're not bad models, although I wish the data was slightly different. Athearn has always gotten the Prox style font right in the past, and for whatever reason on this version it's completely different and it doesn't match prototype photos, so that's kind of annoying, but that's something that's on all of these cars basically. I could change it, but I'd have to get custom decals made because as far as I'm aware no one makes currently a accurate Procor font, which I believe is just a UTLX style thin font. But anyways, enough of the griping. The model itself is pretty good. Good Athearn Genesis quality, nicely detailed. Obviously you have the spinning bearings on the trucks. All I did with the 3 cars coming up here, I'll explain, but this first one here is pretty simple. All I did was light fade, different LPG patching and stenciling, new data added, and then I tried to make the Procor logo look cracked by drawing on some little lines with a Sharpie. And let me try to get on that real quick. Hang on. Try to get that in focus. If you look, you can actually see the cracks on the lettering, indicating that these have been weathered in quite a bit and they're starting to peel. And I think that was an interesting little effect. That was something I wanted to really model on this style of car. But you can see that there's a lot of grime, there's a lot of dirt, mud splatter, spray, and everything like that on the ends. And then as we look at the other end of this car, you can see that LPG stenciling, the placards, and all the grime on the trucks there. Car number 2 is a more standard Procor variation. This one again is pretty much weathered the same way. Light fade, lots of dull coat to tone down the glossy black paint. Lots of grime work and everything like that on the underbody. Really the primary focus is modeling that streaking coming up from the kick-up spray and all the grime running down the car body. It'll generally gather at the base of the car, and that's why you'll see a lot of that streaking, that runoff. And again, just did some different LPG stenciling on this one using a microscale sheet, a little bit of rust and grime on the top, beat up Procor logo again. It has the cracks just like the first one, weathered up couplers of course, all that good stuff. That's the second one. And the third one was a little bit more of a project. I had to do a little bit more fading to this car body, and I did some patch repairs and things like that on the sides, as you can see, where they redid some of the data, re-stenciled things. A lot of times, like I've said before, these Procor LPG cars, or really any LPG car, they constantly are updating stencils and doing things like that. So I try to make these cars look as up-to-date as possible with the differences in the patching and the data and the stenciling. So again, faded the car body, did all the grime, kick up, weathered the trucks, couplers, added safety striping, and then I did all of the rust streaking coming down from the walkways, and then the patch repairs on the side, which let me go ahead and zoom in for so we can see some detail here. Look at that streaking coming down. That's all done with powders. That's a key feature of these LPG cars. Beat up Procor logo with the cracks in the graphic, mud splatter on the trucks, some of the patch repairs anyways, and then on this end here the really unique patch repairs where they redid the data, added some smokebox graphics decals there to represent the new LPG data. And on the opposite side it's just slightly different, but for the most part same idea here. It's just been repatched at a point in time, and then they just added some new data there. So that's again a key feature of one of these modern cars, you know, because they do get kind of swapped back and forth between services sometimes. Sometimes these will haul different chemicals like butadiene. What is it? Some of them I've seen for ammonia, but you don't see those as commonly now. But this version here is LP, and it's just been re-stenciled for LP service. Here's another exciting tank car build that I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys now so it can get you excited for the build series on this car. This is a GATX LPG tank car, a Trinity built LPG tank car, and these are the interesting variations that have the full-length car walkway on the side to meet the different platforms. There's variations of these that have cutouts on the sides. The walkways are different, either inward or outward. This is a version that has the outward railing, if that makes sense. So with this car, I used an Athearn RTR LPG, obviously, stripped all the details off, custom painted it, scratch built my own walkways, and then also used a Plano walkway kit, and various photo etch parts and things like that to make this model. All the decals are smokebox graphics and microscale decals for the data and various other things. Add different LPG stenciling and different things of that sort. This car has a lot of that underbody streaking like we talked about before, I've been rambling about. That's all done with the white oil trick, streaked up on the tank body, of course. Once I did all that, then I just did all the rust streaking and things like that with oils. And then let's go ahead and turn this around so you guys can see the opposite side, because the opposite side shows the railing a little bit better, and we'll actually just go ahead and zoom in on this here because I want to show some of these details off. First off, you guys can clearly see the scratch-built walkway. I will show how I do that in the video, of course, but other than that, this is just an RTR, so it doesn't have the level of detail like the Genesis, where the Genesis has the air hoses, a couple of lift bars, and a little bit more brake components. But honestly, it's easier to work with this style car rather than that. There's less things to have to disassemble. There's a look at that white streaking. Take a look at that. Key feature when you're modeling these cars, you got to have that white streaking, and then you can see the greasy, splattery kick-up. Lots of kick-up. I think it turned out really, really good. It was a little time consuming just because I had to film everything, but it was worth it in the end. Like I said, I think you guys will really like that video. And then there's a look at the patch repairs and data and stencil covers, various things like that. So yeah, you guys can keep an eye out for this build when I get it edited and finished. This car here on the layout is AEX 22010, and this is the first NSE, I believe this is a 5150 that I've done for myself. I've done a couple of these cars for AEX so far, and I've sold them all off up until I got to this one. This one is an ex-Union Pacific car. As you can see, it has the very badly patched, or rather peeling patched Union Pacific armor shield there. And what I used to do this car was a number of just oil washes, acrylic washes, to lighten down, or rather tone the gray on the sides to a rust color. I then did some heavier washes on the top, and then I did all the little dot pits on the sides from hammer marks, added the safety striping, custom patching, made with custom decals of course, added the KD couplers, and I modified the top hatches and did all the weathering on the top. If we zoom in the car here, I'll be able to show you guys a little bit more of that detailing. On the sides you can see the extensive amount of rust pitting and scrapes. Very common feature on any kind of these grain cars. Same thing with the pitting, as you can see. That gets built up very, very quickly, and a lot of that pitting starts to rust. And as you can see, this one is just pretty crazy, and that was done with an older brush, trying to get some of those little scrapes and those little details. There you can see the beat up shield. And then if we actually turn the car around, and if I can get this on the track in one take, this would be nice. Not bad. Okay. On this side here you can see there's some deeper gouges on the sides. Again, custom patching. It's running right through the patch there. And then lots of little rust scrapes and pits that are starting to bleed out a little bit. And then a nicely beat up Union Pacific logo there. On the top hatches, I just detailed these up a little bit with styrene sections going across the hatches to represent the little lock bars. The stock part does not have those pieces, so I just added those and painted them. I just rusted up the roof walks, as you guys saw, and then added the little grain spills and things like that, being that this is a soybean car. And then of course the entire underbody of the car is nicely weathered up, lots of little pits, scratches, and gouges. Alright guys, now it's time to look at 4 box cars that I've done for my modern fleet. I've been replacing a couple of my older box cars with more modern cars that are more up to standards or par with my current weathering techniques and effects. This is an Exactrail waffle side NS box car, and I've been holding on to this car for a number of years now until I could get around to it. And recently I got inspired to try to build this one with the new door. The first thing I did with this car was I cut the old door out and then carefully remodeled everything, filled everything in, and then built my own brand new doors from scratch. NS uses different doors on these cars, and I wanted to model this particular prototype, which is 401014. You guys can look up prototype photos of this specific car. And I just copied some of the graffiti from a sister car. but I tried to do all the heavy weathering, some of the patch repairs, hand-painted graffiti, patch repairs where they added new data. Lots of rust streaking coming from the door tracks. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. There you guys can see the amount of rust streaking done with oils all over the sides, all over the door track. And then the white bleed out from the Norfolk Southern logo there. That's another key feature to this model. On the opposite side, this is the prototype side, I believe. Yeah, this is the prototype side. There is only one photo of this car, and if I can get the dang truck on the track, we'll be able to take off here. Okay, notice the door again. That's the scratch-built component built into the side of the car. Added new tack boards, both sides, and then all of the weathering is prototypical. Very heavy rust on the roof, Katy couplers, kick up, new safety striping added, of course. Lots of that rust on the door. All over the sides, lots of little pits, scrapes, dings, and gouges on the sides. The safety striping is a little bit beat up, but that's a key part to this car. You really want to make it look realistic that way, having all of those elements. So, if we look at the top there, you can see all that rust on the roof again. And then the ends have a lot of that nice kick up. Alright guys, this next car here is the first Aurora Miniatures boxcar I've done so far. Wait, yeah, I believe these are Aurora Miniatures. Yeah, they are Aurora Miniatures cars here. This is a UCRI car, number 15915. I had a similar prototype that I took pictures of in Fostoria, Ohio, and I copied the graffiti from that car onto my model here. And I added the safety striping, of course. Very, very light weathering, just a light fade on the sides to give it that as appearance and as of current. Lots of mud and grime on the trucks, of course. Weathered up the wheels, the trucks, of course. The top has the nicely oxidized roof with a little bit of scrapes. And then on this side here, I again copied some graffiti from another UCRY prototype and then transplanted that onto this model, and I honestly think it turned out really good. You can see the patching and the way that they actually sprayed the graffiti around the numbers and the data on the side of the car. Let me get a close-up shot for you guys here real quick. This is a very important thing because a lot of these modern cars, these artists are very smart. They know that they can't paint over these lettering areas and the decals for the stencils because those will quickly get patched up, so they paint around them is what they do. So I replicated that on this car. Other than that, again, just a nice light fade to the sides. Got a little bit of scribble tag work. That's all done with a Jelly Roll ink pen. Those do a really good job for all those little fine tags all over the sides there. And then everything else is hand painted with acrylics and blended together with just a little bit of a light rust wash to blend it in with the sides a little bit more, make it look a little bit more realistic. Alright, this next boxcar, as you can see, is clearly an F-box boxcar. And this is an exact rail car, and this is the only exact rail car I own at the moment. This was one I was about to sell, and then I thought, you know, I do need some of these. Let's go ahead and keep it, and I'll work on it. So I ended up taking it to the workbench, applied some grime washes to the sides, and then I tried to replicate the newer TTX patch where they put the new logo on the car. And then, of course, I modeled all of the graffiti. That's all hand-painted with acrylics. Modeled lots of little fine tags and scribble, again, with Jelly Roll ink pens. I used color pencils, artist pencils, Sharpies, and Pigma Micron pens to do all the graffiti on the sides, on the door. Again, there's some patching. New data has been added. Very simplified data, as you can see. Just the key data that's supposed to be there, they patched back over. And then on this opposite side here, the graffiti is a lot older, and you can see the difference in the patching here, and that's something I really wanted to focus on because, you know, these things get worked on at different points in time. This graffiti wasn't done the same time the graffiti on the opposite side was done. This is earlier graffiti, and you can tell by the style of graffiti that it's early and that it's kind of a crappy, very quick throw-up style graffiti, as it's called. And so it was very hurriedly done. One doesn't even have an outline, one's just kind of sprayed on there, and it's peeling away on the side of the car. So this one got patched at a different point in time with different patching. And they added more data to this side compared to the other side, which was more recent. And that's a key feature when modeling boxcars. Both sides are going to be different. They're going to be patched different ways unless the car was hit at the same time. Case in point, like this UCRY car, if something like this was to be patched right now, they would do both sides, being that both sides would have graffiti. But being that this car is an older prototype, it's been done at different points in time. So that's a key thing when modeling boxcars, is you have the difference in patching and weathering per side. Again, you can see that new TTX logo, the faded railbox logo, and then all the new data added to the sides. And let's go ahead and zoom in here so you guys can see some of these details. Lots of rust on the door, lots of old graffiti mixed with new. And then if we look at the graffiti on the side itself, it's very heavily peeled up. It's starting to peel off the sides, and it's getting scraped away off the side of the car as well. On terms of the roof, you got the white sealant. It's not really going to show up too well, so I'm not even going to bother. But basically I have the white sealant lines painted on there. Very important for these box cars. And then just a lot of rust and other details like that. Of course, kick up on the ends. All the work on the ends is done the same way as I did on the sides, with oil washes, heavy kick up, splatter, and then of course lots of grime and mud on the trucks with some powders to highlight things. And last but not least, I have this beautiful ATW boxcar. This one was a car I've actually seen, and unfortunately there was no prototype photos of the exact number, I think, so I ended up choosing a different car number for this, but I copied the graffiti and everything from that car number, if that makes sense. So all the graffiti again is hand painted. As you can see, this is an exact rail car, so I did a very light pink fade all over the sides. I added my own decal patches with trim film decals and Smokebox Graphics lettering. Red for the ATW, black for the number. Same thing on the ends. It's kind of weird how they patch these. All the graffiti again is replicated from photos, added the new data and decals. All that was changed to replicate the prototype photos. And this is a style of car that you don't see too many people modeling, but it is a style of car that you see a lot more these days, where they're being a lot more conscious of the graffiti and keeping the data above, or rather raised on the car body. That's why a lot of those newer cars, like those reefers, those ARMN, or not ARMN reefers, but well actually yeah, the reefers, a lot of those newer box cars like the UP box cars, the newer TTX box cars, all that data is up top now because they got tired of having to deal with the graffiti. So I think that was kind of an interesting element. It shows a sign of the times, or rather a changing of the times. Anyways, on the other side here, or rather on this same side, I added some little patch out data decals and things like that, barcodes and such. That's the Smokebox graphic decal set. And then on this side, not as great graffiti. This is again just copied from photos, so I copied what was on the opposite side of a different car here. And it is prototypical, but it's kind of ugly graffiti, so. But you gotta have ugly mixed with good graffiti at the same time, because that's just prototypical. There's a lot of crappy graffiti mixed with new. And again, this is a car where it shows, you know, the aspect of time, where one side was done at a particular point while another bit of the graffiti is older. Like this is newer, this is older, all this on the door is older, all this scribble is older. And you can see that evolution of the graffiti, or rather the artwork, the differences in artwork there. I think that's another key feature with modeling these boxcars. So again, hand painted graffiti, done with acrylics, add the safety striping, new patching, lots of little fine scribble effects done with the Micron pens and the Jelly Roll ink pens. Had a little bit of a grime wash on the sides, but not too much grime, just in key areas like these little pockets, things like that. And then on the top there you can see the sealant. That's another big thing. A lot of these cars have the sealant running between the panels. That's all hand painted with acrylic, and I just did a little bit of scraping and things like that using those Jelly Roll ink pens to basically complete this car. Of course, underbody grime, painted the trucks, wheels, grimed those up, mud splatter, all the good stuff there, kick up on the ends, and then rusted up the Katy couplers. So, you know, there's a lot of work trying to crank these box cars out, because box cars for me take a long time, because I really try to get the graffiti as perfect as possible. I try to get the patching just right. Whereas on hoppers or tank cars or things like that, there's not as much of this kind of paint work to be done. You know, there's a lot of hand painting, very fine hand painting that's very meticulous and time consuming. Probably takes me about, I want to say 6 hours per side just in the graffiti. That's not counting the weathering and everything, blending it in, sealing it in, which is another couple hours of work, you know. So there's a lot of time in each of these boxcars, but it's worth it in the end. But it does take me a long time to crank out boxcars, and quite frankly, I have a whole stash of boxcars I could show you right now that I really need to get around to. But you know, it's a start. I got at least 4 cars done this month. I think that's a pretty good tally, and hopefully moving into next month I may be able to crank out some more. But that's pretty much it for cars right now, guys. I got more projects kind of being cranked out right now. I'll have a video on the model railroad here itself coming up, but right now I'm kind of tinkering away at taking care of some issues and things like that are taking place here. Just some normal wear and tear and getting the track polished up and cleaned up, kind of prepping for an operating session here so I can get some more videos and pictures. But I will get some more work done out here before I show you guys what progress I've gotten done on the model railroad, so bear with me on a model railroad update here, but that will be coming soon. I really want to thank you guys for watching here and sticking with me on these little adventures and all of my little tours of my layout, my modeling, and things like that. It always is fun, honestly, for me to film this stuff. I know it takes some time for me to get videos done, but you know, it's an aspect to the hobby. I really do like sharing this stuff with you guys, and I of course love to hear feedback. So if you guys have suggestions or anything like that for cars you'd like to see done, of course leave comments. I do my best to try to read the comments. I know I get a lot, so whenever I can I try to go through them and just look. So if you guys have suggestions for cars like this that you want to see how-tos on, let me know so I can kind of plan ahead. But I do have some really cool how-tos coming, and I do have some more tank car builds coming in the pipeline as well, so you guys can stay tuned for that. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, guys. Subscribe here on YouTube for the next videos because you won't want to miss them. Take it easy. See you later.